to stream it in order to be able to see it.
Welcome to the only show bringing cops and the community together for some real talk and some real listening. This is uncut. This is uncensored. This is Black and Blue Live. Welcome to Black and Blue Live, everybody. I'm your host, Dale. Thank you for joining me here today. I appreciate you. We got some guests here from all over this great nation of ours that'll help us out here. Let's go through them one by one here, and then we'll introduce everybody here to you. Again, my name is Dale. Thank you for joining me. My first guest here, we've got four here, and we've got another one that'll be coming on here momentarily. My first guest here, she is a 21-year veteran of the Hallandale Beach Police Department in Florida. Everybody, please help me welcome in Captain Rashana Dabney.
Hi,
there she is.
guys.
How are you?
I'm well, and yourself?
Excellent. A little fanfare there for you. All right, and let's go back to me here. All right, and my next guest here, she is also a 21-year veteran, but she works for the Dallas Police Department in Dallas, Texas. Everybody help me welcome in Lieutenant Chandra Griffith.
Hi, how are you?
How you doing, ma'am?
Doing good.
Glad to see you. All right. And hopefully our detective will come on here shortly. But until then, our next guest is a 27-year veteran of the Columbus, Ohio Police Department. In Columbus, Ohio, I hear it gets cold there for some reason. Everybody, please help me welcome in Nicole Prysock.
Hi, everybody.
All right, so let me bring everybody in here. So how we doing, ladies?
Okay.
Well,
Good to see.
well.
Yeah, good to see everybody. So I wanted to bring everyone on here today so we could talk about women in law enforcement. Yeah, the three of you are all women, and you guys all work in law enforcement. So let's go through one by one. We'll talk about your careers real quick, and then we'll dive into the issues. We'll go by rank. How about that? Rashada, why don't you tell everybody about you and your career over there in Hallandale Beach?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rashana Dabney Donovan. I am currently a captain with the Hallandale Beach Police Department. I am in my 21st year in law enforcement. My law enforcement career began in July of 1999 as a community service aide. Less than a year later, I became the first African American female hired as a sworn officer for our agency. So the first 2 years I served in road patrol, and then I worked undercover in our vice intelligence and narcotics unit. After that, I did some administrative duties. I was on the road for a while, and I got promoted to sergeant in 2011. I became promoted to captain in 2015, and that's where I am nowadays.
Nice. Well, glad you could join us. Okay, Lieutenant Chandra Griffith, why don't you tell us a little about you and your career?
Okay, so my name is Chandra Griffith. I'm a lieutenant with the Dallas Police Department. I've worked for other areas. I've worked for the Dallas Sheriff's Department, Mansfield Law Enforcement, and then Dallas Police Department, where I've been for 21 years. I've done a lot of things with the Dallas Police Department, which is the reason why I wanted to go to Dallas, because it is so diverse and has so many venues that you can actually apply to your career. So I was a police officer and then a senior corporal. As a senior corporal, I was also a police officer, but I also did undercover work and deployment and bank robbery detail. And then I went to the in-service basic academy and then in-service academy, where I promoted out to sergeant in 2008. I went back to patrol as a sergeant, and then I became a administrative sergeant to 4 different chiefs over the years until I promoted to lieutenant and in 2014. And I did Love Field. I did a couple of patrol stations, and now I'm the records commander.
Nice. We've got, again, we're simulcast on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, and Twitch, and comments will be forthwith. So we got a Bernard Beck. He says, Chandra Griffith, last time I saw you in 2009, he thinks. You're both sergeants conducting the Columbus PD Assessment Center. Congrats on your promotion.
Thanks.
All right. We'll get rid of that here. And then Nicole, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your career?
My name is Nicole Prysock. I'm with the Columbus, Ohio Division of Police. I've been with the division for 27 years. I've spent the bulk of my career in patrol. I've also spent time in VICE, our counterterrorism unit. I've had a couple of assignments here and there, high school resource officer. I currently am a detective in the crime scene search unit, which we process crime scenes. I've been in that unit a little over 2 years.
Nice. And so you process crime scenes. So CSI, that's you, right?
Yeah, I guess we can call it that.
Not quite as nice and glamorous as it is on the TV show, but
it's a very cool job. The city sent me to it was equivalent of getting another college degree, but they sent me to classes and training, and I enjoy the job quite a bit.
Excellent. So we're here today. We're talking about women's issues in law enforcement. I'm obviously not a woman. I'm a man, but I have a wife. I've got a daughter. I've got a mother, and I work with a lot of great officers as well. One that may be coming on here shortly, as soon as she figures out her technical issues. But if she doesn't, that's fine. So I want to talk about that. There's a lot of issues as far as African Americans going on in the world right now. So we'll talk about those issues with you in particular, both being female and African American. But let's stick to the point of being females. So right now, I just want to play a little clip about how far we've come to where we are today. Let me get that going here, and we'll discuss it afterwards. Check this out.
To dedicate your life towards the service of others. To run towards danger when most would run away. To lay down your life rather than swerve from the path of duty. For that, it takes a warrior's heart. To be one of the select few to don the badge takes courage, honesty, integrity, and dedication. An honor that was once only reserved for men. Those who came before us forever changed the path, transforming the face of law enforcement. But it is our responsibility, our honor, to pave the way for future generations.
All right. So I just wanted to show that clip there to show, how long or how far we've come. You guys talked about a lot of interesting assignments that you've all done in your career. And at the end of that clip, it said, a lot of these things were reserved for men in the past, and then we've gotten past that. So I'd like to talk about that. Looks like we were joined by Detective Elizabeth Green. She finally got on. Everybody, say hello. We are live. Thank you. Since you just got on, we didn't get to do your introduction. Why don't you introduce everyone that's viewing and let us know a little bit about you and your career?
Okay, well, welcome. Thank you all for having me here. My name is Elizabeth Green. I'm a detective with Redlands Police Department. I've been there for 15 years. My assignments have included community policing, school resource officer, sex crimes and child abuse cases, as well as ICAC. And I'm currently assigned to the San Bernardino County Human Trafficking Task Force. So it's been quite a journey. I'm super honored to be with these awesome women and to spend this time and chat with everybody.
Excellent. So we were talking about assignments, and we were talking about these things were traditionally reserved for men in the past, and we've gotten past that. What drove you, ladies, to even want to join law enforcement in the first place? I know it's a male-dominated profession. What drove you to want to enter the profession in the first place? Let's start with you, Lieutenant.
Well, mine is a funny story. So actually, I was a nurse for years before I even went into the law enforcement career. And my husband was actually the criminal justice major. And I would go to class with him ever so often. And I really got to where I really liked it. And then I had an opportunity to actually work as a nurse in a I don't know what you would call it, but it would be like the program that they go to right before they get out completely. And I was working with real bad sex offenders. And so I would also do the med pass and actually also was a sergeant for them. So it was like a split as far as law enforcement and nursing. And so I decided to take the leap and go to the criminal justice side.
Nice.
That's how I did.
That's how you got into it. All right. Well, I'm glad you decided to join us on the law enforcement side. You were a first responder still, but this is a little bit different. Just a tad bit different.
Yeah.
How about you, Nicole? What drove you to want to join in law enforcement?
I hate to say it, it's nothing glamorous. I was in college, my junior year, maybe the end of my sophomore or junior year. I went to a job fair. Columbus Police was there signing people up, and I put my name on the list, and I did well on the test. And it was pretty funny. I came home and told my parents what I was doing, and they laughed. They thought it was pretty funny, thought it was a joke, until the recruiter came to the house for the home visit. So it's probably one of the best choices I've ever made career-wise.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Did you get any pushback on trying to be a police officer, being a female, being an African-American female?
Not from my family. My dad grew up with all women, so it was no big deal for him. His sisters or my aunts are wonderful women. They've got great careers, or they're retired now. But no, not too phased. But my family, I was, I wouldn't say quiet as a kid, but that wasn't anything people saw from me.
Yeah. All right.
Growing up.
Yeah. All right. What about you, Elizabeth? What drove you to want to be a police officer?
It would definitely be a mix of things. One, I've always loved justice, and I've always loved sticking up for people or protecting people. I did not, though, have a fond feeling or any affection towards law enforcement. I thought I was going to actually be more on the public defender side of things. But one of my mentors, and I shared this before, he was someone I knew who used to babysit me from church. And it was through him that I actually began to change my perception of law enforcement, another brother in law enforcement. And I was able to meet other people of law enforcement that were not of color. And so I was like, oh, now I have to challenge my paradigm. So after a failed attempt at nursing, law enforcement Yeah, I thought I was gonna be a nurse. I almost passed out when my friend was having like a real simple procedure. I was just not about that life. So a quick need to switch that up. And I started out doing CSO forensics and stuff, and then the opportunity came for going to the academy. And so here I am. You're
All right. Yeah. All right. And then, Rashana, what was your journey? What drove you to want to be a police officer?
Okay, so growing up, I went to performing arts schools. So I majored in theater. I thought I was going to be an actress and hit it big. Unfortunately, that was not the case for me. I ended up at Barry University, but as a physician assistant. So throughout my college career, I was invested in psychology. That was my major. So I wanted to be a psychologist. And I had a family member who was working for the FBI. So she was like, why don't you just fill out the application and come up here to Virginia and, you can start your career as a forensic psychologist. She sent me the packet and it was like 365 pages. And I was like, nope, I'm not going to fill this out. I don't remember who my neighbor was when I was 5. And I wasn't going to do that. So my mother saw an ad in the newspaper for a community service aide in the city of Hallandale Beach. And so I said, why not? Let me get my foot in the door and maybe later on join the FBI, but I never left.
Never left, huh? All right. So, like I said, this is a simulcast on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and Periscope. So your comments and questions are welcome. As such, Karen Brinson says, glad to see you, Rashana. Major Brinson with Aventura PD. She worked with you undercover back when you were in Vice and good old times there. She said you were the only females in your units. That's surprising. In Vice unit, you weren't too many females in that, huh?
She is correct. The only 2 females. And she's also an African American female. So I'm so proud of her in her journey and for all of her accomplishments.
Excellent. That's great. That's great. So, yeah. So females in law enforcement, let's give you a stat here. So females are about 50% of our country, right? But they're only about 13% of the workforce in law enforcement. Let's discuss why we think that is. What are the barriers to entering law enforcement in your eyes? Anybody can shoot off first here. What about you, Lieutenant Chandra?
What are the barriers, you would say?
Yeah. Why do you think that is that only 13% of the women would choose law enforcement as a career?
A lot of it is because it's still a very male-oriented field. And when you go into a male-oriented field, you have to have a certain mindset to survive that. You can't be thin-skinned, and you have to be willing to accept, criticism that's not necessarily true until they actually get to know you, is the best I could put it. So I think a lot of women, I've talked to a lot of women over the years who have said, oh my God, I'm so proud of you. I've always wanted to be a police officer. And I ask them, why didn't you? And they say, well, that was something that was frowned upon in my day, or, my family didn't feel that women should do that, X, Y, and Z. So I think that's still the reason why. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is the case. Do we think that it's changing? Do we think that more women are considering law enforcement as a career nowadays? What do you think, Rashana?
Probably not.
Just being real, right?
I'm just keeping it real, y'all.
Yeah.
It's not a profession that's enticing for women because it's so male dominated. Even for me, my FTO was like, listen, I don't agree with women being in law enforcement. Women need to be at home. Okay. Women need to be in the kitchen, cooking dinner, having babies, and that's that. So I felt like, well, dag, now I have to prove myself, so I have to work extra just to show this male that I was good enough. And there's still a lot of that going on today. It's very challenging. It's it's a heavy burden, and a lot of females aren't willing to carry the cross. So
Right. Yeah. What do you think about that, Nicole? You think a lot of women are deciding, at least in Columbus, that they want to enter the law enforcement career?
We're getting a lot of women signing up. A couple of them are officers' kids, so we're starting to see a couple generations getting on the police department. We had a female chief, Chief Jacobs, that just retired. I want to say it's been almost maybe a little over a year ago she retired. So I've watched her go through her entire career getting promoted, and several women. I think Columbus does a good job of recruiting, and there were 11 women in my class, my recruit class out of the academy. So we were like the largest group of women to graduate from the academy. I can't say I had those experiences. There were a lot of old heads on the police department. Those guys are all, our chain of command were upstairs, and we didn't really, there were people who didn't think I should be doing the job. People approaching my dad saying you shouldn't have your little girl out there doing this. But we manage pretty well. We support each other. We have a pretty good support system. So it works out. I guess it's your area and how you recruit.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, in the past, had you had any role models that you could look at on TV, or anybody in your neighborhood, any police officers that, when you were coming up, that would patrol your neighborhood, and any role models, either fiction or real, that you could look to and say, yeah, that's what I'd want to be?
I remember when I was a kid, watching Police One with Angie Dickinson. I might be dating myself here a little bit because I'm probably older than everybody. I just liked the show. I thought she was pretty good at it. I can't say I had any. Once I got on the department, yes, I got mentors. I had women I looked up to, but I didn't really have any I didn't have anyone like in that line of business that would say, hey, this is a great job. A lot of people are like, we're afraid for you. You sure? Even women would ask you, are you sure, girl? Are you okay with this? It's not safe. And so I wouldn't say discouragement, but a lot of people are like, could you be doing something else? This job is dangerous. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy watching all the cop shows. I still do, surprisingly enough. I still watch Law and Order like every day. But
yeah, definitely.
I'm no Olivia Benson, but I do my best.
Yeah, all right. And again, another comment from Mo Tom. Congratulations on your accomplishments. Please elaborate on the need for the advancement of minorities beyond officer status. What about you, Liz? Can you touch on that?
What an interesting topic. I think that, so solely on that, there's absolutely a need. Going back to the role model, I did not have any female role models within my department because up until recently, we had never even had a female sergeant. So women moving, much less minorities, we still have yet to have an African-American sergeant in our department. And so I think one of the things is agencies now are having to come and reconcile with the intentionality of recruitment and having diverse hiring panels, diverse background specialists, and diversity in that to navigate the ins and outs of culture. And then going forward to that, even with women, when I first started at Redlands, even though we're a smaller department, we were known as a leading department for women, changed the guard several times. We literally don't have, we are less than half the amount of women that were on when I joined. And so definitely we do need that. We now have our first Latina sergeant, which I'm super excited about. And I think the older women that have been there, I'm putting myself in that category, those that have been there longest are trying to be more intentional in mentoring the young women, because I feel like in law enforcement, a lot of times we're stuck in this weird cycle of being pitted against each other as women or compared to because there's not enough, and not being intentional with saying, nope, that's my sister. We're going to work it out. We're going to do it together. We're going to build each other up. We're going to create resources where I'm weak. You're strong, and so on and so forth. So I think for me in this place in my career, it's more important to be intentional in relationships and promoting each other and myself. But I mean, just promoting so that we can make it, we can make it together. There's going to be Martins, but there's also going to be the speech writers. And so understanding your role in the dynamic in that, I think, is key for women, especially because we are the minority. And like the lieutenant said, you got to have thick skin because we will get ate up in here. They are not playing games, and we deal with a culture of privilege and rape culture within that. And what I mean is the entitlement and the privilege, meaning that we have to defend ourselves or we have to prove ourselves as if we didn't do the same academy. We're not just as qualified. We didn't complete the same things. And most of us are mothers, so we're more than qualified because y'all got somebody at home cooking dinner. We go home and switch hats and put on another role and keep it moving and still show up on time. Minus today, give me a little grace, but we still show up on time, So I definitely think diversity and being intentional is going to be key in this next place.
Dale, your mic's out.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Yeah. I wanted to touch on that family roles. If any of you have families at home, then you had to deal that, where, like Liz said, dealing that double hat. You had to go out and be a police officer, and then you had to come home and be a wife or be a mother or be a good partner as well, and take on those traditional female roles. I'll say that, treading lightly here, being the only male on the panel here. How did you kind of tread through that, Roshana?
Oh, wow. When I first started in my law enforcement career, I was a single mother. So I had my son, and my focus was making sure that he would be taken care of for the rest of his life. So I knew that I needed to have a career that was solid and allowed me to do that. I worked the midnight shift when I first started. So we worked from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. He would be with my parents at night, and then I would go to my parents' house, pick him up, take him to school, try to get some sleep, pick him up from school, cook dinner, run to my parents' house, drop him off, and go to work. So it was very trying during the times of being a single mother, but I made it, I did it. And then I got married, throughout my career. And even that was even more difficult because then I had more children, and I had to also, make sure my husband at the time was taken care of, and, cooking and cleaning and being a mother and showing up for football games and baseball games and majorette practice and just all kind of things. But right now that my older two are in their 20s, they're self-sufficient, and the younger two take care of themselves. So it's easier now. And I have a partner who's very supportive, and he helps out a lot. So it's a little bit more easier now than it was when I first started.
Yeah, no doubt. And, how about, on the work front, all these duties that you had to deal with, did you get any pushback from, supervisors or coworkers, expecting you to do your womanly duties, your motherly duties? Do you get any pushback on that?
I would say no. I had the privilege throughout my career. I've always worked with pretty good guys. We just kind of look out for each other. That was a rule. Everybody get home at the end of the shift. I think it seems like the entire time I've been in patrol, I might have been like the only female, like on my precinct, maybe on the zone, the way the city is split up. But they looked out for me, but it wasn't in a way to diminish my skill set. You just show up. You show up when an officer's on a run by themselves, even a traffic stop. You just show up for backup support. I too started on third shift. It was incredibly difficult, and I also was a single parent and had a daughter first grade when I came on. It's a lot, but the guys I work with are a little bit younger. They seem to have a good mindset. I mean, I've met some people here and there, like, should you be home? Or when you ask for time off, something's come up, your kid is sick. There's some snarky comments from time to time, but it's never been anything tremendous. I pretty much had good support from my coworkers.
Yeah. That's always difficult. I've heard you, Liz, you talk about that in the past about having to deal with your son's health, and then the snarky comments that you get from coworkers or supervisors. Why don't you touch on that as well?
Yeah, I would agree. The double standard, I think, and it's almost like waiting for us to fail. And it wasn't so much as much from the linemen, but more so from the supervisors that created a culture where now, and I don't know if it's because it's more common for single parent homes, so the younger supervisors are less harsh and a lot more compassionate and a lot more understanding, because some of them come from single parent homes, so they understand the dynamics are a little different. And then some of them are just amazing people anyways, and so they understand how hard it is as an officer, much less add in being a mom and an officer and trying to juggle those in. So I think it's gotten way better, but it still has a long way to go. But I definitely experienced, I would say, the double standards
Yeah.
for women in law enforcement coming through. But it has gotten much better.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. What about you, Chandra? What about your experience in that?
Well, I'll be coming up this and next week being married 33 years, and I had 4 kids.
Wow.
Congratulations. Yes.
Thank you. So I too worked the deep night shift because I didn't want to miss anything. And so when you're a new officer, or even if you're not a new officer, you don't get the weekends off and you don't get the holidays off. So if you're a parent, that's a little difficult because, you know, you want to be home for the Christmases and the Easters and all those things. And so how I did it is I worked deep nights. That way it allowed me to be able to not miss anything, you know, not miss the field trips. And all 4 of my kids played 3 sports. So, you know, there was a lot of not sleeping during the day and still working, you know, at night. And I'm not sure how much things have changed. But I have just watched my daughter, who just came on the department. She's been on, I guess, probably 3 years now.
Wow.
And she just had my first grandbaby had a baby. And so I will say, I think things are a little bit different because they were really encompassing of her pregnancy and, you know, allowed her to get to her doctor's appointments and stuff like that. So, you know, I think it's a little better than it used to be, you know, being a parent, the understanding. I think when you're in a male-oriented field, most men will say, yeah, we have children too, this, that, and other. But the difference is you're not the mother. And the mother, a lot of times the men, you know, will have a lot of times women, or wives, I should say, that do not work outside the home. You know, they stay at home and they raise the kids and they work a lot of extra jobs so that they can afford that. And when you look at a mother, sometimes they're single parents, or even though if they are married, a lot of times they are the ones that are doing the meals and the running around and, you know, getting kids ready for school, getting kids ready for bed, that sort of thing. So
Yeah. I can attest to that. My wife reminds me all the time when when I take her for granted on that you know, she was the one taking the kids to all the appointments and coming home and cooking, you know, because she works full time too. She's got more education than me. She's got a PhD. You know, she's a psychologist. So,
wow.
and she's still doing that as well. So, and she's running the producing part of this show right now. So, give it up to you, Liz. Thank you. Well, my Liz, not that Liz. That's my wife's name, Liz. This Liz knows my Liz as well, but she's pulling up the comments. So let's. Bernard Beck says as well. My mother introduced me to the world of law enforcement, and was who I followed into law enforcement. We were both members of the Detroit Police Department. While we have both moved on from DPD, it was the best decision I ever made. So thank you for that experience there, Bernard. And Ben Collins says, when I was a police officer in DC back in the 90s, we had close to 4,000 officers, 70% African American, 30% of which were black women. Women were about half of the management. It's not that way now. It was a woman who taught me leadership skills. Thank you for that, Ben.
I have to ask, do your guys' departments have maternity leave for your
Yes.
okay.
Yeah,
that
that's a
was
federal law. That's a federal law. So yeah,
we don't get maternity leave. We have to burn our own time. And God forbid if you get sick or something while you're pregnant or you have any difficulties during your pregnancy. But I mean, we get the FMLA.
that's yeah,
But that's what we get
yeah.
to.
yeah.
But before FMLA kicked in when you were pregnant. And that was kind of a turn for me. I didn't want to have another kid because I was like, I don't want to be sitting up in the fish tank right after pregnancy and then having to burn my own time. And then what happens if you burn down your banks or you don't have that much time when you haven't accumulated that much time in your vacation banks? What happens if my kid gets sick or, if I have to take off of work? I was single when I came on. I didn't get married till later on, but those are things that play into your decision whether you want to grow your family once you become a police officer. And I figured I'd just go ahead and stick with one. My kid was already potty trained and well into school when I came on. So I kind of was like, I'm too far away from it to do it again. But yeah, it had some effect on my decisions growing my family.
Yeah, no doubt. Another comment here from Facebook. Excuse me real quick, Lizzie. Thank you, sisters, for your professionalism and dedication. Continue being difference makers. That's from Lonnie Lawrence on Facebook.
Thank you.
Yeah. You had something you wanted to say there,
I was
Lizzie?
going to add to that, being a woman in law enforcement, that does change because usually like the beginning of your pregnancy is kind of the touch and go stage and things like that. But in law enforcement, you're required to say everything. You kind of got to give notice like, hey, I'm pregnant. Hey, I'm this. So there are certain privileges as women we give up when we choose this field that make it sometimes hard and add to that a lot of people don't understand. And it's painted for our safety, but at the same time, then you have a miscarriage or something else goes on. It's now public knowledge.
Absolutely.
And it becomes the talk and things like that. So there are other areas in law enforcement that women experience that men will never really understand the depth of that or the risk. And so that does play into also, do I want to have more kids? Do I want to grow my family? Or when I take maternity leave, am I going to lose the chance to promote because now I'm not relevant? I'm not in their face. Or am I going to lose this position? Or for me, I chose not to pick certain opportunities because I needed to be there for my son as a single mom, or whatever else. So there are these other balances that we have to deal with as women too in law enforcement.
And oftentimes, some female officers don't come back to work. Some of them decide they want to do something else because they're not spending time with their children. So we probably have a lot of the women I know either have had great support systems or maybe their spouses. A lot of them are married to POs. We're just deciding, hey, I'm going to stay home. I want to raise my babies. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's just unfortunate. Everybody can't juggle it.
Yeah. Another comment from Mo Tom on Facebook. What is a key piece of advice for anyone entering the profession today, and specifically females entering the profession today? What about you, Rashana? You have a key piece of advice for any female wanting to enter the profession today?
You got to want it. You have got to have this ingrained into your soul, because if you don't want it, if you don't have your why, then you're not going to be successful. And that's with anything, actually. That's in life, period. But especially the way that law enforcement has changed, this is something that people have to get in knowing that it may be a challenge and you have to be up and ready for the challenge. So if you want this profession, let's go get at it and stick with it. Stay the course. Stay the course.
Yep. Good advice. Good advice. I know a comment earlier was talking about leadership, and a few of you ladies here are in leadership roles. I wanted to bring up, past history and where we are today by bringing up some historical photos here. Let's see. We've got this here is Georgia Ann Robinson. She's the first African American female officer from the Los Angeles Police Department back in 1916. Wow. It's hard to believe that they were one of the first ones, and especially way back in 1916. But yeah, we've got another one here from also LAPD as well, Josephine Serrano Collier. She was the first Latino American female officer back in 1946. And you see that she was wearing the skirts there. We were talking off air earlier that females back in the day had to wear, the skirts and the purse and all that. And I trust none of you ladies have had to do that. But yeah, no, not that you would.
Maybe
Well, a lot
me and
of them were
Rashada and the Vice.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Lizzie does Vice too, so yeah, you do what you got to do, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Here's another one. On that note, here's another one here. This one's from Ann Arbor, Michigan. This was back in, I believe, in '75. These officers here, Tanya Paget, Martha Parks, and Tommy Stewart, they were the first fully sworn female officers. Again, they didn't have to wear skirts, and they had the same powers and authority as men. I guess before then, women, even though they were police officers, they didn't have full sworn authority, so they would do, parking details or something of that nature. So, and it's good to see that we've come a long way because, now we've got. Let me bring up what we got now. We've got your chief there, Chandra,
Yes.
Chief U. Renee Hall of the Dallas Police Department. How long has she been the chief there?
Oh, you would ask me. I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know if it's 3 or 4.
Longer than a year, right?
No, it's well longer than a year. I don't know if we're at 3 or 4 right now.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Good. We've got also out in Dallas County, Sheriff Marion Brown. That's good to see. Yeah, she's got the hat too. She's working it, huh? Yeah, good for her. Yeah, and a few more. Here's one out your way, Nicole. Chief Kimberly Spears McNabb over at OSU, the Ohio State University Police Department.
Absolutely.
She's the chief over there.
He used to do the briefs. Chief Stone was their chief, and he was one of our lieutenants. So we get a lot of people moving from department to department as they get promoted. But yeah, she used to do our briefing. She's very sharp lady and seems to know her business well. So yes, a big congratulations to her on that.
Yeah, that's excellent. As a matter of fact, one of the first female chiefs of a big city police department here is the Chief Penny Harrington. She was promoted chief in 1985 back in Portland PD. So she's one of the first female chiefs of a big city police department. So she kind of paved the way. And this photo here, this is from 2017, but you can see a lot of leaders in departments. I know one over here in Atlanta, Erica Shields. She just recently stepped down due to all the turmoil going on over there. And Danielle Outlaw down there, she's now in Philly, I believe. So a lot of good female leaders.
Yeah, my old boss was on there.
Yeah, your old boss. Yeah, where is she at? Right there, Kim Jacobs.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, all right, and then another comment from. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have a female chief too.
You do?
Yes. Her name is Sonia Quinones. She's the first female chief in Hallandale Beach. And
Excellent.
she's also a Latina, so paving
Nice. Yes, leading the way.
I might need to go to the East Coast. I don't know what I'm doing out here.
Yeah,
It's cold.
Well, Rashada's in Florida, so it's not cold over there.
Come on down.
It's humid though. It's humid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we could deal with that, Lizzie. I don't know about that.
We'll be glistening.
All right, another comment on Facebook. Crystal Turner Child says, "Congratulations, fellow ladies in the profession." I would assume that she is an officer as well. So thank you for joining us on the conversation here. Well, I was talking earlier about role models in the media. And I just showed you a bunch of photographs of how long it took ladies in the profession to progress and to fully become full officers and take on full duties. But that wasn't always the case. I remember this show, Chips, if I'm dating myself. You remember her from Chips? Yeah, she was. How about this one here? Heather Locklear from TJ Hooker. Yeah, yes. And these female officers were basically just the eye candy, right? But we've come a long way. Yeah, they did a little bit of work. But basically it was the males that put in all the work. But now we've come a long way. We've got our girl here, She's on 911. She plays an LAPD sergeant on that show. We've also got the women of, the first one was Broward County. Now they've got Memphis and Seattle, Cincinnati, all these different shows. And this is a reality show, so it shows them in the profession. And I don't know if anyone's ever seen this, LA's Finest with Gabrielle Union and who is that? I think that's Jessica Alba there. So there's a lot of good shows out there. And I wanted to show a quick clip of a couple here that we all know and love. Yeah, we all love Lieutenant Van Buren. Yeah, and she ran that unit over there. So
that was a great episode too.
Yeah. Oh, you remember the episode itself?
She shot a kid trying to rob her at an ATM, and while she was off the clock, and she had her kids in the car.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I actually do remember that episode. So have any of you ladies had to? I know we touched on it earlier. Had to find that you had to prove yourself a little bit more in front of your male counterparts, or had to do a little extra just to prove yourselves in this profession?
Yeah.
I see you nodding your head there, Chandra. Why don't you speak on it?
I think one that really sticks in my mind, of course, when you first come on, the men don't want to ride with you because you're a female and you have to prove yourself. And then once you prove yourself, then you don't have a problem. They'll ride with you then. But it's like, oh, it's a female. We don't, want any cowardice or this and that and what have you. When, there's no standard that says or statistics that say women are going to be more cowardly than men. I mean, I can tell you I've seen the other way. But, yeah. But on the other side of it, I think the thing that sticks out in my mind is when I promoted. And when I promoted to sergeant, I remember the guys asking me, now they promoted the same time as I did, but they promoted with a poorer score than I did. And I really studied, and I put a lot of things on the back burner as I studied for this test, because I did want to be in the top 20 or whatever. I was number 16 or 17 on the list out of like 207 something officers when we took that sergeant exam. And they asked me, well, what were you wearing? Now, I'm not sure what you're trying to apply, but nothing that I could have been wearing was going to help me to make that test, make that score, and that's just some of the things that, as a woman, that maybe as men do not get. Like, no one's going to ask you, were you wearing a mini skirt? And that's why you got the job. And the ironic part of it is that a couple of my panels in the assessment center were mostly females. Now, as a female, I will tell you that no one is going to be more difficult on you than a woman. Okay. You think you have to prove yourself to a man. A woman who has gone before you and who has had to make concessions to get this job and to do the career is not going to just let anybody waltz in there because they're a woman and get that job. So they're going to really be looking at you with a bird's eye, view of, is this person really going to cut it? So I remember how angry I was about that, because I'm like, and on top of that, it wasn't like I was some little 20 something. So like I said, no matter what I was wearing, that ain't why I got this score that I got. So that's one of the things that sticks in my mind.
Once I got on my feet and kind of figured out what I was doing, I kind of just did my own thing. I'm not going to lie and say what people think of me doesn't bother me, but not to the point where it's going to affect me being me. I think I just constantly just continued to do my job. That's all you can do. And I really I could have cared less. There were certain people, the time I see it worse is like, say there's a shooting, a female officer is involved in a shooting, or she gets hurt, or she's involved in something, or she's on the losing end of it, which it happens to male officers as well. But when it happens to a woman, the opinion is, she shouldn't be out here, or if it was me, you hear a lot of that. And I'm kind of like, well, men have been on the losing end of these episodes also. Your training kicks in and sometimes we don't win. So that would be bothersome when you hear, well, oh, she didn't do it right, or they're Monday morning quarterbacking her, and she probably made the same decision a male officer in her position would have made. So that part, yes. And sometimes you can never prove yourself. There's just certain people that are not down with you being on department, being a woman in this position. And I would say more so when I came on, because that was the early 90s. We still had a lot of like the old school officers still in the police department. And so, but it got to the point where I talked to some of the older officers, women that had been on before me, that were like, hey, you just do the best job you can. That's all you can. So you stop wanting to impress people at that point. You just got to try to stay safe and survive your shift.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Another question here from Vivi V on Facebook. What advice do you give females in your profession to help them move up into leadership roles?
Study.
Study. Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
Never stop learning. Read a lot of leadership books. Find you a mentor that has gone up the ranks the proper way, who have shown, that have earned their respect, because you can't, the rank doesn't earn that respect. You could be anything and not get the respect. It's, it's how you are as a leader that earns that respect.
Yeah, no doubt.
I also say to be well-rounded, just don't focus on one particular subject or space. You have to be an administrative learner. You have to be a patrol learner. You just have to continue to keep your mind open and take bits and pieces from, various positions in the agency, or various people in various positions in the agency, and just become more well-rounded so that you'll be able to, wherever you promote to, fit right in.
Yeah.
People skills are super important. We're getting a lot of younger supervisors that I think they're so used to texting or not really having to speak in full sentences, have a hard time communicating what they want from and what their expectations are. I have no problem when a new sergeant starts saying, hey, I'm new, asking questions, not coming in and trying to change or reinvent the wheel, but at least being open to discussion. If there's things that they don't care for, not be afraid to. Nobody's going to be happy. Lieutenant, you probably never made a decision. Everybody's like, oh yeah, that's great, thanks, we're going to do it. It's usually always a pushback. It doesn't matter if you're a male, female, what race you are. The chain of command has a hard job. They have to tell people bad news and make them do things they don't want to do. So if you don't have people skills and you can't communicate well with others, that is going to be difficult when you have to discipline an officer, when you have
That's
to
true.
Especially if that discipline turns into something where they might have to be terminated. There's just a lot of steps involved, and a lot of officers or chain of command sometimes mishandle that because they just don't know how to communicate with people. And that was what I've seen from supervisors. I've watched a lot of people get promoted way behind me in seniority. And I just look at them like, what are you saying to me? Just tell me. I'm going to always respect your rank. If you give me something to do, I'm going to take care of it. But you just have to communicate that to me. Like an adult. We're all adults here. This is our job. This is what we get paid to do. You need to communicate that to your subordinates.
Right, exactly. And that's good advice all the way around, male, female, what have you. So that's good advice. So I was, leadership roles. Do you ladies find your subordinates maybe pushing back? When you first, I remember, I guess you, Chandra, talked about that a little bit when you first got promoted. People pushing back on your leadership, on you being their superior. Has any of you experienced any of that coming up?
Well, that wasn't even my subordinates. Those were not my officers. Those were my peers that were
Your
the
peers.
same as me. Yes.
Wow.
That was not my subordinates. I haven't had those issues with my subordinates because I really work on being fair. I believe in being honest, telling them the truth, not candy coating it. If we get lemons, as you often do, let's make lemonade out of it, and I'll be right here alongside of you. We'll work through this. I believe in letting them voice their concerns. And sometimes we can't do anything about the concerns, but just the fact that you're listening to someone's concern matters, that you hear them. I believe in being their voice because they can't take that up to the top. I believe in being their voice when they have concerns or issues that they want. Now, we may not win. It may be that's the way it is. Everyone has a boss, including the chief of police. So, but at least their concerns are heard. And then whatever it is, we go about it and, we get it done.
Mike's out.
Oh, yeah, I keep doing that. I got to push the button. On. Here you go. So I've heard discussions in the past where in all walks of life of women in leadership roles where they're seen as if they ask or they tell people to do, they come off as, excuse the term, bitchy. Has anyone ever experienced that? You got to kind of do your leadership a little differently than maybe a male would, because if a male says the same thing, he's seen as a strong leader. But if you as a female were to do it, it comes off a little differently.
Is that within the department or outside? I mean, is that
Sure, yeah.
Always what?
Especially as Black women, we are assertive. We know what we want. We know what's right. We know what's wrong. We know that we want to have a voice and we want to make sure we're being heard. Unfortunately, oftentimes we are viewed as the angry one. The one with the attitude, right?
Right.
I'm just like, are you kidding me? So what used to happen to me was I would keep my mouth shut because I did not want to carry that stigma around with me. I never wanted to be called the angry Black woman, or the one with the attitude. And especially when my counterparts were being labeled as passionate, I'm passionate too,
Right.
But unfortunately, they didn't see me as that, and so when you voice your opinions or when you're more assertive or in a leadership role, when you're asking for things to be done and they're not getting done and you're continuing to have to repeat yourself and all of these things, you have to be very careful in how you come across because it's going to be more of a negative than a positive thing.
It can affect your career. It can affect your promotions. It can affect your ability to move around just by being articulate about articulating the things that others want to say and later on you'll be like, oh, I'm so glad you said that. I was thinking the same thing. Why didn't you jump on the bandwagon? Because they don't want to be a part of that, And then, like you said, we're labeled the angry, aggressive person, not passionate.
Oh, there she go, rolling her eyes again. What? Oh.
I mean, I think this mentality, not just within the divisions we work for, I think it's how the public deals with us as well, because I will be on a run with a male officer, my partner. I want to speak to a man, or they're talking crazy to you, or until you have to do that hard check, like, wait a minute. I've had people tell me, I want you leave and have a male officer come back. So it just depends on who you're dealing with. You kind of have to take that, work with it within the division you work for. You also have to have that mentality when you're dealing with people on the street, because they are assuming everyone's sizing you up, seeing where you're at. Can I get over? Can I hurt this person? And that's any officer. So you imagine if you're a woman, they're definitely taking points off of you, thinking you're not going to be in the fight. But
Right.
I think that just carries over to everything. And to this day, with the time I have on, a lot of things have changed. But it's just amazing how people respond to women officers, especially. I'm always going to be telling you, my favorite answer is no, according to the public. Telling you something that you don't want to hear, or it's not the answer you want, it tends to not go well. So I think like I said, you kind of have to learn. I was 22 when I came on. As I grew and came on department, became more comfortable. I became more comfortable saying, hey, I don't like this. And I really could have cared less if they thought I was sassy or angry or bitter or whatever term they wanted to use. You don't care, but at least you're comfortable with you. You can go home and sleep every night saying, hey, I know I did the right thing. I've I've stood up for myself. If you let people start walking all over you, they're going to do it for your entire career.
Yeah. Hey, but on the flip side, I know working with you, Lizzie, do you get pigeonholed into doing certain jobs? I know, if there's a rape call, automatically call the female officer. If there's certain things that you have to, for a search, call a female officer if one's available. But, being pigeonholed into certain duties, have you found that? I know Liz kind of parlayed that into, a great career, being a sex crime detective, and she liked that. Why don't you talk about that, Lizzie?
I would agree that a lot of times for us, because with us, we didn't have a lot of women. So you could only have one female per team. And so we rotate shifts every 8 weeks. It's not like a bid system, but you could only, so for most of my career, I never worked with other women. I never had that opportunity. And so a lot of times when the call would come in, there was the expectation that you would pony up to take the rape call or the child abuse call or the things that most of our male counterparts are not comfortable with. The blessing for me is it worked in my favor that it made me the expert in my department, because I continue to do it and I was able to use it to my benefit. But a lot of times for other female officers, that's not necessarily the case or the only option, if you will. And so it penalizes them, or it doesn't allow them to expand their portfolio or diversify their specialties or their experiences and things like that. So you definitely have to be cognizant of what's going on and intentional to make sure that you're not the only one, or pulling your field supervisor to the side or your sergeant to the side and saying, hey, I'm noticing this. I don't mind being a team player, but I want to go here. I want to be a traffic officer. I want to be a motor cop. I want to go into SRO, whatever else, so that you can get some champions to make sure they go to dispatch and say, nah, send this to John. He ain't took nothing. He can sleep all shift or whatever like that. But we have to have a support system, and we have to have champions for us, male and female, in this career, or you're not going to make it. So that was something that I learned, was building relationships regardless of gender, but people that understood my heart, not to manipulate, but to work so that I could grow as an officer.
Absolutely. So, those things can, work in your favor, like she said. Excuse me. But it can also be detrimental if you get called to actually always be the one to have to do this, always be the one to have to do that. In larger departments, I wouldn't think that would be the case, Nicole and Chandra, but it does happen. Is that right?
Pretty steady.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Well, there's still things that just the female officers can do. I mean, you can't have a male officer search a female. So
right.
So I mean, there's still things that and I remember when I came in through the academy, they had a question. They asked some of my classmates, did they think there was a need for female officers on the department? And they answered no, because they're not held to the same standard as us. They don't have to run as fast, jump as fast, do the different, parameters to the same ability. And we just really need them for searching female prisoners. So, that was pretty aggravating to me. And I'd always been an athlete, and I really didn't care. I just wanted to make it through the academy. I didn't care about getting any type of accolades for being in the academy. However, when you said that, I decided that I would outrun you and I'll fight you and I'll do those things. So I made the police board, where those same ones that said that there was no reason for women, there were 2 of us that made it, whereas there wasn't that many men that made it, so. That part,
yeah. I love hearing that. Again, going back to role models, and you just talking about, the physicality of the job as well. Yeah, sure, there are certain things, generally speaking, men have more upper body strength than women, but, women can certainly work on that. And, there's, a female in my department that can run circles around just about everybody on the department. So, shout out to Laurel Shear. I know another officer who works for Riverside, PD, who's one of their first female SWAT officers. So shout out to Liz Contreras if you're watching right now. On that note, let me play you a little something, because we're talking about media playing a big role on what females will think about they can do and how far they can achieve in law enforcement. And to kind of piggyback on the physicality part of this, I like this show right here. Check this out.
Remy, don't go to shore! There's more than one cop in this setup! Why are you mad?
Don't even move.
Holy crap, that was insane.
What? What was that? You cut out!
I
Yeah.
just binge watched this whole series.
So you watch all these things I put up here.
I should done, so I got time to watch TV now.
Yeah.
But, I literally just got finished watching it like last week.
Yeah, so that's great stuff to see, you know, for women contemplating or thinking that they can't do stuff. You know, they're actual real life women that do stuff like that every day on the job, and it's up to the media to actually portray that. Just like, you know, we're talking about African Americans, you know, the roles that they put for us on TV kind of makes people think that, you know, we're not in these leadership roles and we don't do this and we don't do that, when in actuality we are out here. So it's good to see the media doing stuff like that. Absolutely. Do you guys have any long drawn out fights that you can remember in your career, or something that was pretty harrowing for our audience that wants to swap war stories, anything like that you want to drop some knowledge and let these people know? I know, Chandra, you talked about you ran circles around everybody in the academy. Is anything else like that we can talk about?
Well, I don't know if I ran
That's
circles
PG.
around them,
That's
but-
PG.
I don't know if I ran circles, but I did it well enough to actually make the police board, and some of the men who were complaining that women can't do it did not. So,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But, you know, a lot of it has to be with, you know, you don't want to get in fights. You know, I'm older now. You can see
No.
the gray hair. You know, we don't want to fight anymore. That's, you know, a lot of the younger officers that want to, you know, get in there and not think first. And what we're talking about nowadays with de-escalation. That's the big topic, and it should have been a big topic for a long time. But that's another recruitment tool. They believe that females are more suited to de-escalation tactics than males. What are your feelings on that?
I think it depends on where you work, your department, policy and procedure. Also, this de-escalation thing has come up quite a bit. Sometimes that's just not a negotiable thing. Sometimes you get out the car and it's a go. There's no getting that done. I think you find as you get older as an officer, you have more tools on your belt to work with. But ultimately, if somebody decides they don't want to go along with the program, you need to be prepared to manage that situation. It's not going to be hey, buddy, you know, why don't you sit down? I used to try to trick people putting their pills in their applesauce to get them to settle down. Those days are, I think they're behind us, and we just have to. I don't know. It's kind of hard. I kind of wish the public would kind of learn policy and procedures of their departments, because they're quick to say we've done something wrong. And why didn't we do, like, if someone's coming at you with a knife, people are like, well, why did you have to shoot them? They don't know we're taught force. You know, you meet force with force. They don't know someone can close the gap between you and them in 5 seconds and stab you to death. They just know we shot somebody, or he only had a bat, or he only had a crowbar. It's just kind of hard to relay that to people when certain situations cannot be de-escalated. And so it's kind of a fine line we have to walk. because I think
Yeah.
we're finding now officers are afraid. Nobody wants to be on the news. No one wants to be that face that gets in an incident where someone's critically wounded or murdered or killed. You don't want to be that officer. So now I'm seeing officers who are taking that time and they're hesitating when they shouldn't, and it ends up somebody getting hurt or killed. So
Right.
That can be very dangerous too, hesitating. But the thing about it is we've been training for years on my department, something called verbal judo. I don't know what they call it nowadays for the young people, but a lot of times, time and distance is your friend in anything. Okay. Time and distance is your friend. There's no reason to rush in to anything, that's usually what causes, either the suspect or yourself to get hurt is not actually assessing what you have going on, running in there. Those old days of pulling someone out through the vent window is over. Chasing them down and pulling them out through the vent window. It's just not something that we're doing, and it's not something you should do. You don't know what someone has in their car. You don't know what someone has in their home. And as you said, as far as like the knife and that sort of thing, we need to do better with training our community so they do understand what it is that we're facing. Most people don't realize, and I may have it even wrong now because I think they've increased it more, something like 31 or 41 feet. Within 31 or 41 feet, someone can get to you and stab you before you can even draw your weapon. Okay? That's called lag time. Now, I don't know any bedrooms or homes, with a room in it where you normally is where you reach that suspect that has 31 or 41 feet in it. You get in there and someone has a knife. Once again, time and distance is your friend. So, and I think a lot of times, and I shouldn't say this, but they say, and it's a psychological thing. It's been found in psychology that women are before thought and men are afterthought. So we usually we try to think before we act, whereas sometimes men will act before they think, and then they're like, oh, I wouldn't think that would happen. And so we kind of slow it down a bit, I think is what it is.
I would agree with both ladies. There are times where you have to act. There is no time to sit back and think about anything other than what you're doing in that moment and making sure that you go home, and oftentimes you are in a situation where you can de-escalate the situation. I guess from my viewpoint as a crisis negotiator, there were a lot of times where I would show up on scene and the person would calm down immediately as soon as they saw me because they saw in me their mother or their sister or their daughter. So women tend to be more compassionate. They tend to be more protective. And so they're able to diffuse a situation a lot quicker than our male counterparts. And yes, de-escalation works. Time works. When you're able to calm someone down, it does work. However, there are times when we're just not able to do that.
It's not going to be able to, yeah.
Button.
I need to stop that. Yeah. Like I said, we're simulcast on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Periscope. More questions and comments here from Karen Brinson on YouTube. How do you feel about the defund the police movement? We'll keep it at just that portion of it. How do any of you ladies feel about what's going on with the defund the police movement and everything that's happening in our world right now?
Well, the last month, I don't know, and a half, how long have we been going? Maybe from the end of May till now. I know here in Columbus, our crime rates have spiked quite a bit. A lot of people are retiring. A lot of people were due to retire anyway, but a lot of people now are just leaving the department. They've had enough. Saying, hey, I'm 6 months out, but I'm going to go ahead and do it now. We're already short-staffed. We can't even keep up with the retirements as opposed to putting recruit classes through. We're always short-staffed, it seems like. The younger officers, unfortunately, are the ones that are down there on second and third shift putting in the fight. I don't know how much more we can be defunded. We can't get a lot of the things that we need currently. It's either based on grants or the state giving us money or the mayor making, there's a big chunk of the budget for the city that goes to the police department, but we're still, some of our equipment's old. The things that they want us to have, the body cameras, people don't realize those things are $1,500, $1,600 per person. We have a police department over 2,000 people, so we can't keep up. Our tasers are older, so we can't just go out and buy new things when we want them. It has to be approved through city council. It has to be, things have to be accounted for. We have horses, we have helicopters, there's fuel, there's pilots, there's feeding horses, we have dogs. These are things that have come in handy. We don't want to not have the helicopter. They're the ones that can chase for us, so we don't have to be out here hunting for people. But there are certain things departments have to have. If we don't have the money, do we need to change maybe some policy, maybe some other workarounds, some other things to, as far as training is concerned, that would be fine. But the funding is not, it's just going to make it worse. We don't have the manpower to tackle a lot of stuff that's going on.
I'm not sure that that the statement defund the police is reflective of what they're saying they want. I think our communities are hurting. Law enforcement is hurting. Our nation is hurting. So usually when a child cries or when someone is crying out in pain, the pain just unleashes everything. And I just do whatever I think I need to do to stop the pain. That may not be the solution. And so when they're saying defund the police, I'm not even sure that the reality of that is real. Because from what I'm understanding, it's taking funds and putting it towards education or putting it towards other things. And I do feel education absolutely needs way more money than it's getting. But at least for city agencies, it doesn't work like that in terms of the money in the city council, and education doesn't necessarily get its money from law enforcement. And a lot of law enforcement is funded through grants, and a lot of the tools or the things that they see are militarized things we have are actually given to us. We never purchased them. Mm-hmm. So I think going back to what everyone is saying, there has to be some education, but there has to be education from an even platform, meaning those who want to see change need to be educated on why we train, what our standards are, and also understand that standards vary from state to state, city to city. And then working with the federal agencies, the federal buy-in, our community buy-in, and working together to bring about change, because we want to serve our communities as a whole. We want to serve our communities, and we are already at a loss in law enforcement, and we're at a loss in our community. So I'm not sure that the term defunding police has been fully processed out or thought out. And I don't know that all of our communities feel that that's the most efficient way of going about this. I think agencies would be amiss if they don't hear the cry and begin to make sure that their departments are serving the communities that they're representing, or looking at, are there areas that we need to change? Are there areas we need to grow in? Are there training things we can just implement to begin to bring about healing and to make our officers better and to serve our community better? Do we really have community policing? Do we have procedural justice? Do we have the legitimacy? What's our community, bank of trust going? What's going on with that? How do we fix that? Because that's really, when you step back and look at a lot of the issues, there are some things that were already going on. This was the explosion point, unfortunately, and it cost lives and careers. And so if you deal with the root before it becomes a seed and a flower, you can avoid these situations. So I think that's what I see with the defunding police is now the explosion of undealt with issues.
It scares me when you say defund the police, because what I'm thinking about is that there are some departments, smaller departments, that don't have the money and are able to get the grants, but not all the grants. And they don't have a lot of population where they're getting the tax, money and funding that they need. And I think that is why you're not getting the training that you need to get. And that's when you don't have the training, that is where you see some of the issues you get. All right. And so I think defunding is the wrong thing to say. I think we need to make sure that the funds that they are getting are going to the proper places. Community policing, training, different things like that. PALs, explorers, stuff dealing with the inner city children. And then I think that's when you start seeing some of the changes that they're looking for. But heaven forbid you say defund the police and you take money from the police and even big departments, with some of the things that have happened and COVID-19 and stuff like that, you're going to have a shortfall in taxes and stuff like that. So the departments are already going to not have the funding that you think they have. And heaven forbid you need these police officers to have certain tools when you call for us and we don't have them.
Yep,
Right?
and we don't have them.
That's what scares me.
Yep. And I know we talked about it earlier. There's been a few of those things like it over at CHOP in Seattle where they said they didn't need the police and they had their own little community, and then a few murders, homicides happened out there, and then so it all went to hell because people being people. That's what happens. You are going to need the police, or you're going to need some form of law enforcement to hold down the rules and regulations, because that's just what we are as people. There's always going to be somebody that doesn't want to follow the rules, and it's got to be somebody to hold them accountable. That's
And
just the way it is.
secondly, we're dealing with people probably on their worst day, something tragic has happened to them.
Yeah.
And we might be in there telling them something they necessarily don't want to hear. Like, I'm telling you can't do this. This is not appropriate behavior, and that it's not accepted well. So we're in the business. Unfortunately, we have the ability to take people's freedom from them. We have the ability to take their lives from them. Unfortunately, we are put in positions sometimes where we have to make a quick decision, and sometimes that decision might result in you losing your career, losing your life, losing your freedom. There's a lot of things at play here. I don't make excuses for officers who are out here doing things that they shouldn't be doing. They're not like the Minnesota incident. That is not trained. Columbus Police has not allowed us to do chokeholds, any kind of literally hog ties, anything. Those things are all out the window. So I think the public thinks that we're trained to do these things, or when we shoot someone, why couldn't you shoot him in the leg? Why couldn't you shoot him in the arm? And I'm like, you're going to have me kill 3 other people trying to do that. So I just ask that, as someone who's, African American, who's also on the law enforcement side, I think we're all privy to some things that the general public is not. I feel that everybody owes it to themselves to educate themselves about their division. Our stuff is all public record. If you have a problem, you can ask how we're trained. You can, you're a taxpayer. You can actually pull files and see how we're trained and see what we're taught to do. And that might, instead of flying off the handle and saying, oh, it was wrong. Well, why would you know that it's wrong if you're not aware of our policy or how we're trained or how we're taught to do things? I just think that it would behoove the public and to learn a little bit about their local law enforcement. And we train constantly, implicit bias, discrimination. We have so many classes, and then that's not including the stuff we have to take every year, firearms, things like that. They have to load all this training on us. We have to take in service. So we can only get so much done. The state has a requirement, so many things that we have to do every year. Implicit bias, everything that they've asked for, we've been doing these classes for years. I think you have to ask what people are, who they are. Some officers are just jerks, not necessarily racist. Some of them are just jerks. They treat everybody bad. Unfortunately, if you're African American, you're on the receiving end of that. You might confuse that. But I work with people who are just salty dogs all the time, never happy, and it conveys itself when they're at work and when how they're dealing with the public in general. So I think that's the other thing we need to recognize. Is this person just a jerk, or is he displaying behavior that indicates, hey, I might not want to deal with you because you're Black or you're Hispanic or because you're a woman. We kind of have to learn how to split the baby and figure that out as well. Yeah,
none of those are acceptable, whether they're racist or they're just salty, because you got to treat all the the community with respect. Let's get a few more comments in here before we wrap this out. Again, Bernard Beck says defund is definitely a misnomer. Given our social structure, the abolishment movement is still unattainable as well. I'm all for the reallocation and taking some of the numerous responsibilities off our plates because we definitely entirely do too much. And this is for sure. We're doing things that we weren't normally doing back in the day, and now everything is just falling on the police. Let the police handle it. Lonnie Lawrence says on Facebook, excellent responses to the question of defunding. People must realize that stuff they see on TV where police shot someone in the leg or the arm is and I would say a farce. That doesn't happen in real life. They got your comment. Yeah, by accident. Yeah, that doesn't happen in real life. Yeah, you got somebody, the small target that's moving and shooting back at you or trying to hurt you as well, and you expect to hit that. That only happens in the movies. Indiana Jones,
the
whatever.
Knows our training is controlled. It is a sterile environment. That target is not going to shoot you. It's not a real thing where your adrenaline's pumping and you're trying to make good decisions, quick decisions. When we're at the academy, everybody knows, hey, it's going to be okay. When we get done with the scenario, it's over with. No one's going to get hurt. Everyone's going to go home. That doesn't translate well to when you're actually, your target's not moving. We're shooting at a target on a piece of paper as opposed to someone who's actually running or engaging in some criminal behavior. I think people don't realize even the best of shots in the academy or the best of shooters, when they're in an active situation, that the odds of them hitting their target where they anticipate is not going to happen.
No doubt.
And also there are opportunities for the community, at least for my agency, where they can come and see what we do. We have community policing academies where people from residents from our community can come and they can see what canine, the canine unit does. They can see what internal affairs does. They can see what training does. They can come into our simulator room and they can look at scenarios that we may be put in and how we may respond. They have the opportunity to respond themselves to those situations. So that's another thing that we offer as well, to get a different viewpoint.
Yeah, no doubt. Appreciate that. So as we wrap this up, let me just ask you ladies one by one, what skills and traits do you think a prospective officer should have if they want to come into this career and if they want to succeed in this career?
I think you have to come in. I notice a lot of the younger officers are coming in with, I'm only going to do this for a little bit of time and I'm leaving, or till I can move on to something better, or something better comes along. When I came on, when you had a college degree, you didn't want to be a police officer because you had a degree. It was going to get you a job. Now we're one of those jobs that everybody wants to have. Well, not maybe now, but we get paid well for what we do, or don't do, I guess we could say. But I would just say there's got to be a commitment. You can't. This is not a decision that you take lightly. You're carrying a firearm. Again, you have the ability to take people's freedom and their lives, and you kind of have to go into this with that mentality. One, am I equipped to do this? Two, you got to make a commitment to the division you work for, and you have to. It's a commitment. You can't just go in there thinking, oh, they get paid so and so a year. I'm signing up for this, and you're going to wind up being a liability to your department.
Yep.
You need to be compassionate. Be willing to continue to grow your mind. Stay physically fit. There's some that once they get on the department, they blow up to 300 pounds and then they wonder why they can't chase anybody or what have you. And it's a safety issue, right? It's not even about what we appear to look like. It's about a safety issue. So be committed to keeping yourself physically fit and keeping your mind fresh and open to new ideas. Don't be one of these people that is, I want to be, go to a job that's just monotonous. I want to do the same thing over and over because that's not this career. And it's not a job, it is a career. And, you want to continue to grow and to continue to learn things and be willing to change. Police don't do change well. That's one of the things that we don't like to do. But that old adage of we've always done it this way needs to go away, because you can't continue doing the same thing, because what is the definition of insanity. Right?
Yep.
That's what I have.
Yep.
You also, I would say that you have to know that every day is not the same. So there are some days where you're going to have to work over hours of your shift because you made a later rest. You know, I know a lot of times with the millennials, they just want to do their 10, 12 hours and they just want to go home. Sometimes it's not like that. Sometimes
Nope.
you're going to have a
They
later
tell you they
rest
ain't gonna do it. Yeah.
right. Or, you know, you're going to have to be flexible. You're going to have the flexibility for this job. And you also need to have the heart for the community. I am a big proponent of community. So if you do not love your community, you do not respect the residents that you work for, then you shouldn't be in this profession.
Yep. This ain't for you. Yep.
I would definitely say have integrity. Your yes, yes, your no, no. Like that's one of the big things we see is lack of integrity in a lot of things, and it's a career killer, and it ends up costing more than just your career. The other thing is balance. I think a lot of people get in here and they become so consumed with this, they don't have balance on the outside. They don't have balance in family life or balance in interactions with others. And I think that balance is what keeps your mind right when you're coming in here. So you're not so quick to react. You're not so quick to judge or just get burnt out, because this is a very stressful job. So if you can have balance and set boundaries to safe places and what's going there. When I leave work, I'm going to take a 20-minute run, or I'm going to read a book, or I'm going to go to church, whatever that place is for you to transition, because everybody's not a criminal. We deal with criminals, but when we leave work, everybody's not a criminal. So being able to transition into just enjoying the sun, the wind, the beach without, and we're going to always keep our head, turned and looking and things like that, but trying to find a balance so that you can enjoy and appreciate life and appreciate people, even in your friendships, and that everybody in your circle shouldn't just be in law enforcement. You need a balance to kind of check and remember and stay connected to your community and to the people you love.
No
and that's
doubt.
hard right now with everything going on. I'm sure you guys have family members that are feeling some kind of way with everything that's going on. So it kind of makes family events a little weird and uncomfortable. And I find myself defending, and I had to kind of settle down because all this was stressing me out quite a bit. Just kind of watching our city get torn up. Us just standing by and just watching it. It was just kind of, what are we doing here? How are we going to manage this? I just had to decompress. And unfortunately, people that aren't in this career kind of don't see our side of things. I think African-American officers have had to kind of walk a fine line. You're gonna, I think our Black officers, during the protests were getting a more difficult way to go than everybody else.
Yeah.
They would zero in on the Black officers, and it was terrible. It was kind of like, we want to see more faces that look like ours. And I'm like, well, is this how you're going to treat us? Because nobody's signing up for this. So,
Right.
I hear people saying, well, we want to see more Black officers in our community. I grew up in Columbus, so I'm very comfortable any place in the city that I go. A lot of officers are not from the jurisdictions they work for. Or why is he afraid? And I'm like, well, you don't want an officer around that's not afraid of anything, because that's a concern as well. So it's just, you're right. You have to decompress. You have to kind of figure out a way. I think right now all of us are leaning on each other at work, because everybody outside is, and then people that are afraid to say they support us, or it's not a popular thing to say now, so people won't say it. So we just, it's kind of hard, like I said, as a Black person, to watch all this and try to figure out. There's some occasions I think no matter what, they defund us, they take our guns away, whatever they were suggesting, I think that people are generally going to still not like us, no matter how we transition. But I mean, I tell people many a time, I'm not here to make friends, especially when I'm doing business at work. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to help you get through the situation right now. And I just, it stresses me out a little bit. But so like I said, your coworkers are probably the people that most get it. I talk to my family about it. They don't necessarily get it, but it's difficult to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's a few more comments before we get out of here. Again, Karen Brinson from YouTube says, I totally agree with all you. Thanks for voicing your opinions. Love you, ladies.
Thank
All
you.
right. W. Scott on YouTube also says, this was very informative, ladies. I love black women. Okay. All right.
Oh man.
All right, ladies, I appreciate you for coming on and letting us know your opinions and what you feel about what's going on and your experiences as women and women of color on your departments. Those were your last words. Anything else we want to say before we get out of here? Anybody want to say anything to anybody and say hi, mama, or thank you watching thank you watching daddy and that like that? Yeah.
This was good meeting people outside of your workplace.
Yes.
Having just a conversation where nobody's hostile or upset. I appreciate
It's
it,
true.
seeing other people's perspectives. So I do appreciate you doing this. This is my first time seeing you live since you left Columbus back in April.
Good look. Yeah, that's been a while. Yeah, that was a little tight
I
back
don't
then.
think we were writing cursive yet.
Yeah. All right. I appreciate everyone for joining us on the social medias. This will be recorded on Facebook and YouTube. I guess it'll be on the other platforms as well. So just go check it out. If you haven't seen it, tell your friends, your family, your coworkers, everybody. I appreciate you. I appreciate you ladies for joining us. And everyone be safe. Wear your mask. Wash your hands because we're still dealing with that. Thank you. I appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
for having us.
You take care. Be safe.
Good night,
Be
ladies.
safe. Good night.
Are you guys all on LinkedIn?
Yes.
Let
Okay,
me-
I'll hunt you
let me-
down on there.
Let me end this broadcast real quick.